have so much amazing people around you. And my question is, how can they, because they have an amazing story to tell, get it out to a broader audience by having this powerful people that have a huge connection and impact in the world?
I think it's not so much about finding famous people. I think everybody's knocking on their door. They're all well handled. They're all well overly managed. I mean, you know, from trying to reach people with interviews, and I'm sure Precious has had this too when you've had alignment with Hollywood, and you've had it in Silicon Valley, right? You know, so the question of being able to have contact with these people is, you know, for what? And so the one I'll give you one example of one way that I think can kind of address this issue of the gifts you have, so that other people could see those gifts and unwrap that, would be to think about the people who are out there who are the influencers in your field. Who are the people who are transforming what you do and taking it to a level that you admire, respect, and cherish? And so it needs to be in the context of the world that you're living, because you know what? People can read fake really fast. And I found that the most famous people read it the fastest, because everybody has an agenda with them. It's so, the hardest thing in their lives is finding anybody authentic. Everybody's selling. I remember hanging there with Richard Branson. Finally came over and sought me out at the bar, right? It's like, who are you? You come to all these meetings, you spend some time with us. It's like he wanted to find out what I was working on, so we started interviewing you about what I was working on, because I wanted to be the inverse of that. I didn't want to be needy, didn't want to be on top of him like everybody else is needing something from him, or they want an endorsement, or just everybody has an agenda, and it's not authentic. So it's more a matter of saying, who are the movers and shakers in your field that you'd like to be admired by or aligned with, so that you can find a way to contribute value there. And then it won't actually be so hard. Because, so in a particular field, it happened to be with him, it was because I was interested in starting incubators and entrepreneurship centers. So I was leaning into something I believed in. I got some traction for it. And so when he was starting his entrepreneurship centers, he was looking for, so who can people, who are out there who have more kind of practical entrepreneurship centers? And so maybe we could give the same way. So I became one of the founding patrons of the Virgin Entrepreneurship Center in Johannesburg and then Jamaica that we went to together. And both Benina and I have started a lot of businesses. So I guess it was interesting. It was almost as if you will attract them if you're on the same path. So find out what highway they're on, but it's got to be your highway. Because if it's fake or overextended, or it's just an agenda to get selfies with famous people, it's not going to work. Right. So it ends up being very contextual. These people are so used to having kind of climbers on rather than contributors. And like you, come to it with such a generous spirit that you want to be able to contribute to that particular campaign that moves you. With Charles Schwab, I think he became a billionaire in the financial services business, but I think he was brought to the planet to help people with learning disabilities, which I share. That's my journey as well. It's our daughter's journey, and that was his journey before it was prescribed. And so now he has a foundation called All Kinds of Minds, and he's found out how people learn, and how people can find their particular genius and gifts, and that has been such a privilege. The 3 billionaires that I work for all had learning disabilities as I did. We were all, he finally got through Stanford after being, thrown out over and over again. Couldn't get the bonehead English, right? So I think we were talking earlier about, whether you've had a good struggle and whether that helps prove whether you want to be in that alignment. Boy, if you can align with powerful people who've had a big struggle and they're paying that forward, and it authentically is sincerely something you want to contribute to, go there and volunteer. The nonprofits need that support and that help. And then, if it's cool to meet some famous people, they're going to show up because it's real for them too. And they'll be able to read that in you, that you care about it as much as they do. It's interesting because you see usually the media actually doesn't represent it that way. It's usually the overnight success, or made to appear that way. Or they're just such a failure, so they're just humiliated in the press. It's one or the other. And yet most of these people who have had lasting success are driven by, that's the subtitle on our book, Creating a Life That Matters. Success that's built to last comes from being a part of something bigger than yourself. And all of you have that. And all of you have that. generally people who've found what works for them have a sustainable model in place based on three things that we learned about. It was surprising because we did a global survey on success, and we asked successful people what the definition was.
And we were trying to hone in on how successful people define success. And what we found was that all of us have kind of a general definition of success, but it's not all the same. But there are three main types of definitions of success. The first one is, I'm successful when I am serving a larger cause, when I have a purpose, when I make a difference in life. The second group of people said, I'm successful when I set an achievable goal and I achieve it. Now you can imagine these two groups probably don't get along really well, because one is curing cancer and the other is, I'm getting this done today, right? And then the third group said, I'm successful when I experience all of my passions, with the emphasis on the word all. Because if they didn't experience one of the passions, they weren't as happy. So this group was actually the least happy, which I found kind of interesting.
They were all successful by external measures. They had a reputation, they're making money, they had a career, they'd be asked to speak at their industry conference.
And what we found is that the people who had long-term success were the ones who kind of used this as a three-legged stool.
Not just one, but three.
But they kind of took on all three definitions of success. And when one of those wasn't in favor, they could use the other two to kind of stabilize their lives.
Right.
And so finding something that you can have that cause that you're serving, you have a manageable goal that you have together, and you're moving forward on that, and you find you do it secretly for free. When you can find whatever that is, then you have this incredible stability.
You are unstoppable.
Yes.